Today's part of our Business Spotlight program. I'm with Donal Murphy. He's the CEO of Donlouco Ltd, and they're based in Mallow in County Cork. So over to you, Donal. What is it you do, and for how long have you been doing it?
How are you? And good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity. Donlouco Ltd, yeah, as you said, we're based here in Mallow in County Cork, and we're a supplier of engineered parts, mechanical engineered parts. So we do a lot of manufacturing in China, and we support manufacturing companies here in Ireland, UK, and some in Europe, basically providing them with parts for their manufacturing process, and we work with them on the day-to-day things like delivery and scheduling and planning. But we also do some design for manufacture, design parts. We manage all aspects of the supply chain right to their door. So we deliver based on their schedules and stuff like that. So that's what we've been doing. And next year we are 20 years old.
Wow,
So
yeah,
we've been doing it for some time.
fantastic, fantastic. And what do you attribute your growth to?
Yeah, it's initially it's shed loads of hard work and dedication. But I guess it's a fundamental belief in what we do as a company, and that you come up with a business plan or a business idea, and you start working on the business, and you initially, you're skeptical and you need to validate your business model, which can change over time and all the rest of it. But it goes back to, I guess, when I used to work for an American multinational, and they sent me off to China one time, which I ended up staying there for 2 years. And when I was there, I met all sorts of people, and this was just after uh, the early noughties, and met lots of people. At the time, I think there was 241,000 Germans resident in China
Well,
in kind of 2002 timeframe. And a lot of them were there working for German companies based in China, but they were manufacturing various articles for all sorts of industry, the automotive industry and whatever else. And they were basically exporting these parts to their factories in Germany and Eastern Europe, building global products that we all recognize every day. And I was saying, you know, I worked in manufacturing since I finished college. I've always been involved in manufacturing. I said, well, look at all these other industries that are below these that need this kind of assistance and help, and you take smaller companies that are never going to have the wherewithal to be able to manage and control and access quality supply chains in China. So they needed that service. So that was the kind of seed that was sown back then. I came back to Ireland. Initially, there was talks of being involved in buying out the local site here in Cork, which didn't work out. Which subsequently closed 2 years later. And I had started this business initially in my spare time. So we were involved in, designing some plastic parts and getting tools made and making parts and getting them out of China. I suppose as a company, it's owned by myself and my wife, and she's also an engineer, and she's Chinese. And when I came back to Ireland, she came back to Ireland, and we got married, obviously, and then we kind of started this business back then. At the time, both of us were working independently for different companies, but we decided to start. And then you had the crash, of course, and then we kind of said, "What are we going to do now?" We had a young child at the time, and then Louise Zoes is my wife's name. She said, "Why don't you?" Why don't you start a business doing what you have always been saying to me? How come there's no company facilitating small or medium sized businesses in Europe? So we decided to give it a go, basically. And we haven't kind of looked back since. But it has been a lot of hard work. I mean, today we're probably very fortunate. We have a lot of people working for us. We have a lot of manufacturing capacity in China. And in recent years, it probably has got a little bit easier. We have engineers that are working for us for 12, 13, 14, 15 years, probably some of them. And so they have built up a huge amount of knowledge. There's been a huge amount of sharing of knowledge. And, that's the way it works. I mean, if you look at Ireland, we probably brought 40 containers last year of mechanical parts, no quality related issues.
Wow.
So it allows our customers then to plug these parts into their manufacturing system, which helps them to streamline what they're doing. It allows them to deliver more efficiently, more cost effectively to their customers, so they become more agile. Um, so it's that kind of win-win for them. So there's a lot of advantages in kind of having that whole thing streamlined and cost advantages as well. And it's just even day-to-day communication. We can, basically, change a CNC program on the side of a machine, literally tomorrow morning or whenever they're going into work.
Hmm.
And we can have that discussion with our customer here in Ireland, speaking English, to, any sort of technical level, and we can communicate that effectively to our guys, both here in the office in Ireland and then to China, and we can have these changes made. So we completely short circuit, errors, mistakes. We don't have rework, and that's just making parts, and then the whole traceability and management of raw materials and testing and all that kind of thing. That's become second nature to us at this stage.
Fantastic, fantastic. Um, and if you had to start from square one in business again, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? One of the things I probably reflecting on how we've arrived to where we are today. I often kind of say, well, I suppose myself and my wife, our natural uh, position would be, we'd be reasonably risk averse, and we were always, very slow to kind of grow customers, very slow to take on any sort of risk. But I suppose it's easier to say now than before. In the early days, we wouldn't have had the level of capability that we have in China now. But I suppose on reflection, we should definitely have been more aggressive in the marketplace. We should have been willing to push ourselves out there more. There's a lot of very, very good things that we've done that maybe other companies would have been shouting off the rooftops, which we never did. Um, I go to some customers today and they kind of say, "Yeah, I think I've heard of you guys, but I've never met you. Or, how come you haven't been banging our door down up to now?" So I probably would change that. I would have been more aggressive in the market. I think if you fundamentally and strongly believe in your business proposition and it has been validated and you're making money, I think, you should just go for it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And,
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, fantastic, Donald. And what have been your biggest learnings as an employer since you began in business?
hmm, yeah, I suppose that's potentially a topic of discussion all of its own.
I can tell.
Um,
Even
you
these.
know, it's amazing. The first thing that you learn is that everybody's different. And everybody has a different view on things. And you can get two mechanical engineers, that can come out of the same college, and they're just not going to be the same. And you have to be able to facilitate all people. and everybody, it's absolutely imperative that everybody that's coming to work is happy coming to work.
Yeah,
And it's all about creating that positive working environment because it's amazing what you can achieve with a group of people that are working in a positive environment. And I think nowadays, as I myself and Louise, we move more out of the mire of the day to day tasks that need to be done. I think that's what we spend a lot of our time doing,
fantastic.
making sure that everybody's happy, that everybody has the capability, that the pressure points that are there, that all these people need to know that we're here as a group and you put your hand up and you get help. And that's the main thing that we've learned. And, we all have kind of personal lives outside of work as well. And, you learn a lot of these things about people as well when they're working for you over time. And you have to be able to deal with those as well. And you
Mhm.
know, sometimes you're giving advice that's not exactly business related, but that's part of the job too. But again, people need to know that we are somebody that's, as a company, that we have the right cultures in place. We're willing to help people, and and that's not just here in Ireland, but it's the same throughout China. The culture in China is an awful lot different, and we try to improve that. Where you know, different management styles. We try to change and influence that as well. And that's a lot of what we do.
Fantastic, fantastic. And you kind of touched on it there briefly, but how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
Um, I think there's no question about it. But any sort of leader or entrepreneur that's running a business, that owns a business, that has all that responsibility, personally, it is extremely difficult to switch off. Like, there's no point in saying otherwise. And business coaches will kind of say, well, you need to switch off, but it's much, much easier said than done. And for
Okay.
years, myself and my wife, even when the kids were really small, we would be on holidays and she would have a laptop and I would have a laptop,
Oh dear.
right? And, in the early days, like we, I often left they could be gone to the beach and I would be on my computer until 11 or 12 o'clock.
Mhm.
And doing stuff, and then it's gas. Like Louise will come back, and at nighttime she's on her computer because she's getting stuff teed up for the guys in China when they come to work.
Yeah, the
And
time zone.
that has been the way it was for a number of years. But thankfully, I think again as we've grown and developed, we've got better systems in place.
Yeah,
We have an awful lot more flexibility now, and we have a better work life balance now for sure. But it's difficult, and I think it's something that when you're younger you don't think of, and there's lots of things you take for granted. But I think as you get older and the business matures along with yourself, I think it's something that you definitely have to think about and be
Mhm.
more. It's something that myself and Louise have sat down and spoke together about, like, well, we need to do X, Y, and Z. Right, we're going to do this. And, it might mean that we may not have the big 2 week holiday. It might mean that we've a long weekend here, but we prepare and we switch off for that long weekend. We plan things better, but you have to do it. Yeah, no question.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know in our setup, our objective is to have a commercial profitable enterprise that works without you. And I suppose that's the holy grail in there and the whole thing. But as you say, easier said than done, maybe.
Easier said than done. Yeah.
I think my experience anyway. I mean, I didn't invent any of this stuff. It's all taught to me over the last 21 years. So when I started on this, mindset is huge. Like I would have thought back in the day it was a bit fluffy and all that, but now it's 50, 60% of my. If you get the mindset right, then the strategies are so much easier. And the flip side is also true. If you don't get it right, the strategies are very difficult. But that's as you say, you could have a whole discussion on that for God knows so long. Um, you touched on it as well, but what qualities do you look for in employees, and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment? You were touching on it, but what do you look for in the employees when you're taking them on?
Um, I think it's all down to attitude, personality. Um, One of the things I've learned over time is that you can teach a lot of things to the people that have the right attitude,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's really really important. And remember talking to my sister, and she's the CEO of another company, and they have a lot of people working there. She goes like she has boiled people down to two categories. There are people that are going to be drains, and there are people that are going to be resources. You know, and she's like, it's like the old saying that I would had back in the early days when engineers would come and say, we have a problem with this, and this, and you kind of say, well, guess what? Come to me with your solutions, not your problems. So you change kind of, you know, their thinking, but if they're fundamentally have a positive attitude and are willing to contribute and work and have that positive attitude, you can fix all the other things. You can change their thinking, you can steer them, they get to know you. They know now that, well, I know what Donal will say when I say this, so I need to be prepared. But at the end of the day, it's people with positive attitude.
Good.
And it's very, very easy to see it. You can see people coming into work, and the body language alone can even tell you this person is here to punch a card and put down the time and get out. And then there are other people come in and say, what interesting things are we going to do today?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's just that attitude is what we search for all the time. And it's very, very important.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, we've loads of sayings, but one of them is, yeah, hire for attitude, train for skills. And,
Mm.
I think that's what you were saying there. And you touched on the positive and productive. I think when we measure it on average, we find that a positive, engaged employee is about 3 times more productive than the guy punching the card or the girl punching the card. It just has a huge impact on productivity, so well worth the investment. And it's something I spend a lot of time on with my clients. And maybe just to round off, Donald, what are some of the common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you address them?
I think that the top level misconception, depending on who you're talking to, obviously, but the top level misconception is that if you're running your own business, you're just absolutely making a fortune and there's no end to the money. And it's the complete opposite. I mean, again, in some of the earlier days, like you would often go up the road on a Friday evening to go home, and you kind of say, well, we did this, and this, and all of the employees got paid. But you would sit down and you would say, well, okay, what was there for me? And there's a lot of people, I think people that start their own business they're extremely brave, but they're taking huge amounts of risk. But a lot of the time, I find that businesses that are north of 10 years old, you find that the founders of these businesses they absolutely worked for some time for nothing that nobody ever thinks of. And you say 25, 30 years later, a business of that age, and next thing they say, oh, he drives whatever fancy car or whatever he's into. We say, oh, sure, he's got his own business, but they don't ever think of anything, 5 or 6 years that you've worked for note or at least very little.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
So that's one thing. And in business, there's no doubt about it, but there's always a queue of people with their hand out. And quite often you're the person at the end of that queue.
yeah. It's a very common response to that question that I get over the thing that and the one, like, if we ask business owners, what before they go in, why do you want to go into business? And they say, oh, to have more money and more time. And the follow-up question then some years later is, how's that working for you? No.
I have no money and I have less time.
Yeah.
It's the reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that,
Yeah.
I think like the first 10 years are difficult in any business, no matter what you're doing.
Mhm. Can be, yeah.
And we were no different. I mean, um, and you have to, you have to come through that. You have to survive that, and then you're demonstrating resilience, and you know, it's a growing revenue, and we have all for the last 10 years. I mean, it's all the growing pains we've been trying to deal with, which
Okay.
on the one hand is great. I mean, it means that certain things are happening, and we've got revenue, we got customers, we are growing. So they're all very, very positive things. But under the hood, there's always that machine that has to be kept going, and has to be continually serviced and oiled and moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Donal, listen, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to talk to us today. There's a pile of stuff in there for our viewers. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks again.